So, hi everyone. This is the new episode of Grow This, Grow That podcast devoted to engineering management. And today we have the biggest episode that we ever have. It's 5 engineering managers, and we'll discuss developer motivation. Guys, I guess we can introduce. I think the first guy who I see on my screen is Yogesh. Could you please introduce yourself first?
Hi everyone. My name is Yogesh, and I'm happy to be here on this podcast. Right now, I am an engineering manager on Facebook, now Meta. Prior to that, I led the team in LinkedIn and Adobe and some other companies. Thank you for inviting me here. Looking forward for this.
So my name is Damian. I'm from Poland, and basically I manage 17 developers right now. I run a software studio called Yogesh. So we work with multiple clients from different countries. So time zones aren't the challenge at all. But it's also interesting how the time zones influences motivation, which I might uncover a little bit today. And it's a very interesting mention about Meta, which is like previous Facebook, as they're opening the office, not office, but starting hiring developers in Poland right now, next year, sorry. So this is quite interesting. And they want to hire 10,000 developers for new Meta project, which is quite interesting from Europe, of course. So I'm super happy to talk also about the motivation from the Central Europe, what influences that. So even for Yogesh, it might be quite interesting to hear what motivates like Central European developers, because it might be slightly different from US, from I don't know, China and so on. So I'm super happy to be here, and guys, super nice to meet you.
Hi, my name is Tristan Jung. I am an engineering manager at Twitter. I currently lead a couple teams that are responsible for sending notifications to our users. So if you've gotten a push, an email, or a text, it's part of the org that I'm in. I'm also the engineering site lead for Twitter Toronto. We're able to grow pretty quickly here over this year. So hopefully some of the answers that I have will be around location and geo as well. Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Ritesh, and currently I'm working as an engineering manager for Delivery Hero in Berlin, and we are responsible for handling the logistic leg of restaurant partners. And I have been in the industry for like a decade now, and I specialize mostly around supply chain domain. Previously, have built logistic as a service from scratch, handling like around 30 plus members and playing different roles like director, engineering manager, and architect. So yeah, happy to be here to talk about motivation for developers.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm an engineering manager at Thinkific, where we sell, it's a platform for online courses. I lead the performance team here, so I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you all guys for introducing yourself. I guess we can start with the first question that just starting the whole discussion. What do you think, whether is the motivation is important influences developer productivity, or they go somewhere in hand? Where does it start?
I feel like in this day and age or this environment, motivation is not just important, but it is a necessity. Like given that how hot the market is, and like and how the industry is growing in general, the engineers have multiple options to go outside the company or like even go within the company. So unless they feel empowered, they feel motivated to work on your team or like work on a project that they're working on, there is no reason for them to stay. So in my opinion, I feel that motivation for individual engineers or like for a team is a necessity. And as an engineering lead or something, like that should be one of our top priorities.
Yeah, so I would second whatever Yogesh said, and in fact I would take it a step back and take it out of context from developers. It's a general thing. Like if people are motivated towards what they're doing, they actually go above and beyond, and their productivity shoots up. So it's not just for developers, it's for everyone. As I mean, the more motivated they are, the productivity goes up. So yeah, that should be like the number one priority for any leader to work on.
I just want to add that motivation is a bit harder in current times when quite a lot of people work remotely, and we see that there is next wave of COVID coming, which won't be easy for all of us. Because I had a gap this year when I could meet my developers. It was super awesome. Belonging is the key here. If we talk about motivation, somehow, if at least once a while we stick together, it's just super awesome. It feels like human touch, because without it, it's more like transaction. If we don't have human touch, it's like, I work, you pay me, you give me some extras, incentives. That's my motivation. But if I work closely to the people, we feel this vibe, we feel that something inside us drives us, because it's about the drive inside of us and I mean the external environment. Then we cover the motivation. So for example, to keep high-performing tech team, we need to have both. Once, we need to understand what drives every single developer, because they can have multiple different drivers, and we need to understand that and somehow give them what they expect. And on the other side, we need to give them some fun, because they have good salaries and they expect more, some education, some tutoring, and so on and so on. So external plus internal, if we have both properly mapped for each single developer, then we are in a good place to manage those guys, because they know that we are good coaches and we are on their side, and they can come to us with every single problem or issue they have, because they trust us. And that's why they don't take salary like, I don't know, 20% higher, because it's risky for them. They feel good in this environment and the place they are. That's my opinion, my feeling. And again, it's not easy, especially when everything happens via Zoom and there are no shake hands and so on. And yeah.
I think in my notes I had something similar of like motivation is the most important factor to someone's productivity, just like making sure they feel included, making sure that they're making an impact and actually growing towards where they want to be. So yeah, I don't have any nuggets to add on top of that, other than like I agree that it is one of the most important factors in terms of productivity.
Yeah, I think all my points were pretty much said. I agree with all the points everyone has said so far. It is really important, and it's important to foster that kind of environment within your team.
I will follow the thing that Damian already twicely touched about factors that influence developer motivation. He started with the time zones, then when he shared about our factors. So what factors influence developer motivation? Like what do you think? And in the time of COVID, in the time of remote, so what actually make developer motivated and less motivated?
So I mean, I feel that motivational is behavioral. And I mean, if you see what neurologist says, there is no difference between like how behavior works like in your home environment versus your work environment. So what motivates you to eat healthy, or to do exercise, or to do things which are hard, which takes you out of your comfort zone, is no different than what motivates you when you come to work. So I believe in this, there is this Pink's model, which talks about like what motivates employees. And they talk about three things, I'm going to add the four things in there as well, which I feel is also important. And they talk about this thing called autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose. And the last thing that I want to add there is like relatability. And what does that mean? If I have to deep dive a little bit on what does autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose mean? Autonomy is like giving people autonomy to do what actually they like to do. So people talk a lot about matching your passion and competency with opportunity, and that's where the manager's job comes in. Is it like identifying what people's passion are and what their competencies are? That's also very important, because a lot of time engineers will say, "Oh, I'm passionate about this," but they might not be competent on that thing. So that's why you have to be very careful in figuring out if that opportunity match with their passion and competency, and giving them the autonomy to do it. And autonomy is actually different for different people. The autonomy for seniors will be very different from autonomy from junior people. So the manager's job there is to figure it out, like how much autonomy to give for an individual people. But that is extremely important to motivate individuals. Second is mastery. So figuring out like giving an opportunity for people to be master of something, like a go-to person for something. So like some people want to be a master in security. Some people want to be, in terms of engineering, I'm talking about. I know that there are people here in different domains, but in engineering, like some people are passionate about accessibility or like some other domain, and giving them an opportunity to be a master or go-to person or feel important on that certain thing is also really important. And the last one where managers plays a lot of role is sense of purpose, is telling why they exist, why this team exists, why this org exists, and why this company exists. So like figuring that part out and communicating and articulating that to individuals is extremely important there as well. And at the end of the day, like the last thing that I also want to add here is in this remote environment and everything, the sense of relatability where like people feel that they belong, people feel that they're related to each other, whether like in terms of work or in terms of like social things that you do, or like they feel this sense of family. The book, Culture Code talks about highly motivated team describe their team as a family. So like when they say describe their team as a family, what they mean is they feel relatable to each other, is extremely important. Important. So like in my opinion, motivating individual, like focusing, I try to focus on these four things: autonomy, mastery, sense of purpose, and relatability.
Totally agree to Yogesh. So actually, I have a similar model that I follow, which actually encompasses all the four factors that you spoke about. So to lay it out simply, it is called biceps. So everyone wants to have biceps, right? So let me elaborate what is biceps here, right? So B stands for belonging, I stands for improvement, C stands for choice, E stands for equality, P stands for predictability, and S stands for significance. So as rightly Yogesh said, belongings, he has already covered belonging part. The second part would be around improvement. So some people relate very closely to improvements, like they want to improve someone's life or the way company is working. They want to improve others, or however they want to improve. It depends on them. So for some people, they want to improve their monetary purposes, and some want to improve their knowledge. So that is also a factor that you have to figure out, like what does this particular person really want to improve. Then comes choice. So a lot of people want to have that choice of like choosing between what kind of work they want to do. That is something that could be a choice environment would be providing them. Similarly, it comes around equality. Like if I'm doing this work, I should be equally rewarded for the stuffs, right? So those are kind of topics that has to be covered. And then the biggest part is actually significance. So many of the people relate to significance, like what significance they are making as being part of a team or as part of a company, right? So if you give them those exposures or define them, like this is what is the significance of your work, probably they get motivated more. So that's the concept I follow, biceps.
Unfortunately, I don't have a fancy acronym that I can list off, so it's gotta be hard to follow. I think how I think about this is actually pretty similar to what Yogesh and Ritesh were talking about, probably different flavor. But at a high level, I try to think about where each folks want to be, 10 years, 20 years. They may not stay at Twitter, they may be in a different field, but like, what is their end goal and how can I support them along that way? And I think the factors in terms of motivation are around, are they actually learning and growing in these areas that will get them to where they want to be? Whether it's like a VP of a big company, they want to found a startup, they want to go into product or design, regardless of what they want to be. If they feel like, I'm able to help them get to that goal, I think that adds a lot to the motivation. And then making sure that they're making impact along the way, right? They're not just working on random stuff here and there. They're actually delivering impact. And then I think the second part, kind of going off of what Damian was bringing up earlier, was, do they have the right support group to pull from, aside from just their manager or their mentor? And I think that has gotten really hard because Twitter has been growing across the world, and members of your team aren't necessarily in the same office, and we can't even go into the office right now. So like, how can they find the right support group when they're new to the company? They haven't met anyone yet. They don't know who's at the office. They don't know who to reach out to. So I think that's been a big recent challenge, but I think that's a very critical piece in terms of motivation, because it's like a support group that they can reach out to when they run into problems. And then of course I had notice some other factors around, like, how's the company doing, morale of the company, how much are they getting paid, the comp aspect of it. So I think all those kind of tie into folks' motivations.
Okay, so I just want to add one thing to what Tristan said, because I think we live in a little bit therapy culture, which is quite interesting, because there are freelancers, single developers who are doing well, but they're like cowboys. They do stuff, they don't care about group that much. But most of us, as human beings, we just want to be close to people, and we need, first of all, strong leaders, because people are motivated if they see that my manager, my boss is a super cool guy, and I admire this person because I want to be like him one day. And if I'm in the company or in the team and I can follow this person, it means that I can learn from such person, and this is like very important factor. And second parameter is, again, the team behind my back. Do I have the cover? Because if you go to Harvard Business Review, all of those leadership articles are saying about one thing: empathy. If in your workplace is empathy and people care about you, you will belong. You will be more motivated, because at the end of the day, what is motivation? I mean, one sentence: it's how we feel. If I feel driven and if I feel good, then I'm motivated, and I will contribute more. I will give more, and so on. Because I want, like, even here, I feel a very good vibe between all of us, even if we see first time in life. And this is the key for being motivated, feeling good. So if me as a manager, I can create in those people a feeling of, again, belonging, sense of purpose, and so on. All of those feelings, they will be motivated, because they will trust me that even in case of feeling bad or wrong, they can come to me, tell me openly that something's going on and I need your support. And I'm all yours. I have some time in 2 hours, that just schedule a call. And that's what motivates people. Trusted environment, because then safety, they feel safe, so they can give more back to the team.
I agree with all the points that have been said so far. That was pretty much all of my notes. One thing I would add is they need to know what problem they're trying to solve. That's one of the main reasons why they became a developer in the first place. And helping them understand what problem they're trying to solve, I think, is pretty important for their motivation as well.
Just one thing also I wanted to add, like the concrete actions for motivations is like a pyramid model. Like, it's different from like what you do for individuals like ICs. I mean, each person is different, right? When you go and buy the clothes, like, since like clothes are different for different people, like, the way you motivate them is also different for like different people. It all depends on like, what their competencies and passions are. And the similar thing applies for the team and organizations in the company as well. So like the things you might do for motivating individual might be a little bit different than what you do for like a team or like for an organization or for a company.
I just want to add one thing to that, because what you said is very interesting. But sometimes I talk to my developers and I ask them, what do you need? And this is the tricky part. Some of them, they don't know what they need. So it's quite funny. And then you have to somehow shape some options, and you have to make some evaluation and say, this is option A, B, C. How do you feel? Because they aren't good career planner. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them are very straightforward. They know what to expect. But most of them, they need those leadership tools, guidance. And if you ask them what drives them, like, need to have a very deep interview and go very deep and understand their values and so on. And then you can create some program, motivation program for them. Let's call it like this. But it's more about the path for being successful in your own motivation. Because this is, I think, very important, that not all people are aware of what motivates them. They're quite busy with daily life, and suddenly they realize, I hate my job. Why? I don't know. I mean, I'm burnout. The burnout is a big issue in IT, and people aren't aware. And then we jump to mental health. This is also lack of motivation. And then people go to therapy again, especially in COVID. It's like rising like crazy. And suddenly they start asking the questions, who am I? Why am I doing this work? And why am I feeling burnt out? Or is there anything wrong with me or my motivation? And then they start asking questions, who am I? What drives me? And what is really important to me? So that's what Yogesh said us about different levels of motivation. I guess that's very, very important to have the sense of myself and my priorities in life, to make proper decisions on with whom I want to work and on which kind of project at this specific stage of my life.
And I think that's where it's very important for, like, that's where I think managers' actual jobs comes in as well, like to identifying that. So wearing this hat of either a coach or a mentor or like a manager, like it doesn't have to be someone who reports to you. Like it could be anyone within the organization or anyone within a company. And figuring that out. Why would we hire experienced manager? Why would we hire like people who has done this before? Is to actually guide people, identify their strength, and then guide them in a direction that, you know, that they're passionate about. That could be within this team, outside the company, or like even outside their areas. Like I had people who didn't even know that like they don't want to work on in this industry. Like they want to work on in completely different industry. Identifying them and guiding them to that direction is where, like, I think as a manager, the manager's job or a mentor's job or coach jobs comes in.
I don't know if you've seen the movie. It's a comedy series called Ted Lasso. Have you seen it? Yes, you're smiling. So some of you have seen. So because in Ted Lasso, he's a manager of, for people who aren't aware and will be listening to this podcast, he's a manager of a soccer team from US who comes to England and suddenly starts coaching English team. He has no idea about the football at all, and he becomes the manager. So the moment I want to mention is that once upon a time he has a meeting with the journalist, and the journalist asks him, Ted, why are you here? You have no idea about football, about those guys. Why are you the manager, the coach for those guys? What's your role in this whole being a manager for those players? And he said, listen, my role is not to win or lose. My role is to make the best out of those guys on field and off field. And this is the role of managers. So this is actually, I guess, the summary of what we are talking about right now. We want to make sure that our developers will be the best version of themselves at different levels they are, different needs they have right now.
Yeah, the Ted Lasso is very great series, actually. That completely, I would, while you've been sharing, I've seen the faces of other guys here. Though most of us were smiling. we've been sharing the same relation to the thing. Yeah, actually, we very organically we've discussed a lot of factors and that influence developer motivation, and you've all added to this, like feeling of equality, feeling of improvement, progress, relation, providing the sense of autonomy. And Yogesh and Damian already started a conversation what the role of a manager is here. So I will go through the things that we actually discussed right now and trying to get deeper in role of engineering managers on all these aspects, maybe what engineering manager can actually do to give this sense of developer, maybe some practical things that you're practicing within your team, some question that you like to ask that Damian, like the Damian shared, then what you need question that he starts many discussions. So I will go and start with the thing called autonomy that you guys started. How you are actually understanding where is the thing, how you understand how much autonomy you need to give to the developer, what you're looking at, and when you think then it's okay for developer to fail, or when it's not, how you are approaching this.
It's based on like a risk factor. You have to calculate that and then actually look at what really is actually motivating the person who I'm gonna give a particular feature to work on, like the level of autonomy I'm going to give to that person, right? So you do your risk calculation, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for the success or failure of the team as well. So you will always have to figure that out, right? And then based on the level of expertise the person has and what you can see, or at what stage you can jump in to help them out, I'll already chart it out and then make it very clear to the person, like this is where this work is being assigned to you. You are happy to do whatever you want. these are the deadlines, and then you go with it. So for different level person, it will be different. Like for a junior folk, I can't give like 100% autonomy to him, because at a later point, they don't really understand what is the responsibilities that they are gonna be taking for delivering this particular task, right? But when it comes to a senior folk, they are already quite there at a level where they understand what are the responsibilities that is being expected out of them, and they take it through till the go till the end. So with them, I can be like 100%. Okay, you go with it. So it's basically on a risk analysis model that I follow.
In terms of autonomy, like I think sense of purpose and choice, like they go hand in hand. So like that's what it is. Like autonomy is in between, like sense of purpose and choice. So sense of purpose is where managers is coming, and or like organization is coming. Like it all starts from the vision of the company, what company want to do. Then like that trickle down to like how organization is contributing to that, and how your team. So it's a circle of impact, right? And you would have your circle of impact within your team, and as a manager, it's your job to actually articulate it. What's your team's sense of purpose, what they're trying to achieve, what are their OKRs, or what are their goals, like what people what as a team we want to do, and then giving the choice to an engineer to choose like how they want to contribute in that goal, because there are certain level there they can do whatever the things that they want to do outside what your company or your team or your organization desire. But giving that choice to the people to contribute to that sense of purpose and team is what I feel is autonomy. And how much autonomy you give like to an individual, as like Ritesh was also saying, is also depend on the level of a people. But at the end of the day, as Damian was mentioning, is the feeling. Like you should have a feeling of autonomy, no matter what level you are. Like whether you're a junior or whether you are like at the most experienced person in the team, you should feel that you have an autonomy.
Yeah, I just want to dovetail what Yogesh said around, making sure folks understand what success means and why that's important for the company, and why they're there. So I think at the end of the day, how I think about autonomy is making sure they understand what the North Star, like what the direction we're going in, how are we measuring success, because we can't just let them do we can't just do anything that we want. There is a certain direction that we need to go in, and how our team contributes to that. So I think that's kind of the prereq that I have in my head. And then after that, as the other folks said, depending on the level, providing them with the right constraints or the support so that they can have freedom. Because, for instance, more junior folks, if you give them a green field of, hey, do anything you want to solve this problem, they may get lost. They may not be able to get to where they want to do. So like understanding for each person, depending on their level, their experience, what sort of constraints and support to provide to help them be successful. And then in terms of risk factor and failure, yes, there are some things that need to be done and can't fail, but making sure folks feel that they can fail, and if things do, then we're here to learn from the mistakes and remediate it rather than them getting in trouble. So they don't have this fear of failing the next time, because that's where a lot of innovation and progress happens.
One of the culture thing that LinkedIn has was around risk was like, take intelligent risk. I think the word intelligent is extremely important there. Like, and I like that because, that's kind of a culture and value you want to foster. Is like, you can take risk, but make sure that you take an intelligent risk, which is either driven by data or driven by like something.
I love what Tristan said, making sure that they feel like, they can fail. I love fostering that in my environment. I think it's important to make sure they have room to experiment, and just making sure that they understand what results you're looking for. And that's kind of the guidelines I use with autonomy.
I guess the challenge with autonomy is that you give people responsibility and ownership, and not all of them want to have it, because it adds some kind of pressure to some of your work, and you already are busy because there isn't enough of coding and doing stuff, and we know that this world is crazy. More products, more startups, more code, and so on. So I find it a bit difficult that again, you can give people autonomy, but only with what Tristan mentioned, full support for, again, Yogesh, intelligent failures. And only in this case it worked. But some people, they just don't want to have it. And it's nothing wrong. They just don't want to be super responsible for things. So again, it all depends on some kind of maturity and where we are in life and how far we want to go.
Just one point I also wanted to add was in terms of expectations. I think autonomy is also an expectations. So like as an example, like when you go up in your career ladder as a senior engineer, it is expected you to be autonomous. So like if you're asking for help, like you're not senior engineer, like, to begin with. So like, I mean, setting that up, it's not just a culture, sometimes it's expectation as well. Like depending on where you are in your career ladder.
Okay, thanks for sharing all this. Another thing that we partly touched besides autonomy was the thing that I think is concerning every one of us due to the COVID times is about building relationship, building the support group, feeling this empathy. And actually, due to the COVID times, that was one of the biggest parts, I guess, that actually motivated people, the people around them to feel. Actually, people around you, we're copying others. We are like, firstly, we are animals still. So generally, we are like feeling it from the others who are surrounding us. And no surprise then when the COVID happened, so many people started to feel that they're not burning out, they're not feeling the sense of purpose, maybe because this feeling of motivation only, they never had the sense of purpose, or maybe haven't thought of the autonomy or the equality or other factor that influenced their motivation, because that was purely compensated by the relation that they have at the workplace. They never thought of it, just filled it. So when we're having it right now, the times of COVID, the times of the remote work, and even though the COVID and the whole pandemic thing will be over, we still have, as Damian shared, that Facebook is trying to hire 10,000 developers for the Meta, and most of them will be remote. Also, they're working with the remote teams. How this relation would be compensated, how engineering manager can actually create this sense of relation right now when you don't have this opportunity to all the time speak and feel just the shoulder of the team member. How are you doing? How are you fighting back right now?
For context, our office here grew from, I think, 10-ish folks, engineers, to about 80 this year. So a lot of them have never met. And this was something that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of culture, making sure feel folks included. I don't think it falls on, in my opinion, I don't think it falls on one person, like one EM or one lead cannot make that happen. And a lot of the feedback that I've gotten was, if it's top down, it almost feels like a mandated fun time, mandated culture time. Hey, come in and please just like introduce yourself to each other. We're going to do icebreakers for the next hour. So some things that we've tried to do is just create optional venues for folks to be able to come in, introduce themselves, meet others, because at the end of the day, like we were discussing, even these type of sense of belonging and community really depends on the person. Some folks like working in smaller groups and sometimes being alone. Some folks want to be in like bigger groups and talk to a lot of other people. So I think it's too hard. I found it too hard for, me to enforce that on a group, but rather providing the right opportunities. So depending on what people feel comfortable with, they can jump in and participate in the activity that they want to. And then I think the responsibilities for leads at that point is making sure that they have a good pulse on what's actually happening. Like, are there folks that are being left out? Are we doing too much of one type of thing, to make kind of smaller corrections as we go?
I mean, I feel that if anything, COVID has helped. For people to become a little bit more intentional, including the working in this remote. We always worked on remote environment. If you're working on a global company, like who have presence over all over the world, that was always the case. But COVID made it like a little bit more intentional, because then everyone was remote. and like something that you'll never experience. Sometimes it's hard to be intentional about it because your brain is not wired that way. But since now everyone is remote, they understand the struggle that the other people, like, the remote people were facing in past. And now they are being intentional in terms of creating this, like, inclusive environment that is needed, like, to create this sense of belonging, to sense of like relatability between the people. But at the same time, I feel like we all have to like, to be effective or to be motivated in a remote environment, everyone have to accept the fact that this is going to be a norm, like going forward. That was not the case before. I think people didn't accept like, this is what's going to happen. So like acceptance is extremely important. And I feel that in order for team to be successful, similar to what we talked about, like autonomy and all those things, like in order to be a successful remote team, I feel like having autonomy is also important. So we were also talking about like, how can we make remote teams successful? Like, for example, if the team are different time zone, we actually don't want people to talk 9 o'clock in the night or like, early in the morning and so on. So giving a very specific sense of purpose for like a remote environment. So having a very like black box team, like when you're creating a team in a remote environment, in that case, in terms of time zone is important. Like relying on platform, like, we changed our one-on-one to be not like, status update one-on-one, but the personal update one-on-one. After like everyone went remote, like we just talk about what we did during weekend, or like, what we are doing. And, we talk about one of our one-on-one is not appreciation one-on-one, not like, so making those small changes, like which will bridge this gap of like, either the coffee talk that we had, walking when we were in the office, is like being intentional about that, like implementing that using the platform and, different strategies that we have, I feel is important in terms of like motivating people to feel relatable, to feel like close to each other.
I guess the biggest challenge is for people who have started their career during the COVID, because, for example, people who have met before, they had this feeling of the team. That's one thing. Or even if they've been working in IT teams remotely, partially, they had always someone. For example, I were a junior intern. There was always someone behind my back who said, "No, just stop, don't do it. I will help you," and so on and so on. And now there are these new guys, juniors, and they enter, and it's hard to ask for help behind the screen. It feels like interruption all the time. But if you had someone with the coffee behind you who are spilling his coffee and telling you what to do, it was easy. That builds, again, the culture, the belonging, and that someone is close to you. So I find it very challenging building this. I know some guys who never have imagined that they will have remote companies, but now they do, and they manage that. For example, one of the guys is using something called Gather. I will send you the link in the chat. It's called gather.town. So they have parallel world. So they do their work in their bathrooms whenever they are sitting. In the same time, it's like multiverse. Welcome to the Marvel world. And they sit in this metaverse called Gather. And basically, they create their own space with different rooms. And they set up rules. In this room, we can talk. In this room, we discuss. This is the room for focused deep work. And they work like that. So there's like a set of rules they've created as a part of fully remote culture, COVID, and so on and so on. And they live by that. And from time to time, of course, they meet, sometimes physically, sometimes virtually. Or at least once a year, they fly to Mallorca or somewhere like that. This year, during the summertime, it was possible. That's why they organized it. But except that, again, it's a set of rules, set of conversations that works. But they still struggle because it works for independent people who are a bit separated and can work this way. But the young guys, newbies, juniors, they find it very, very difficult because someone to offer his free time to teach them and to feel like a part of this team of the family. And again, it's not easy. All of us have teams below, so we help those guys. And then there's another more who requires, I don't know, 20% of my attention for the first month or more, because that's how it works in reality. to fully onboard the person and to create this onboarding. So it's very challenging in my opinion.
I try to treat my one-on-ones as like sacred time with the individual contributors. I always try to make sure that, if I can't make my one-on-one, I always reschedule and make sure we build that relationship, at least in the beginning. And then within my team, making sure that we make time to spend time together socially. Like I know Zoom fatigue is also real. But like we could be playing a game or we could be interacting. Sometimes we invite other teams to our social events as well so that they can start building those relationships with other people in the engineering team, especially with a big engineering org. It's really hard to create those relationships now that we're remote. So yeah, making sure that you create that environment to help them build those relationships or yeah.
Yeah, so I just remind myself one thing, and it's very important, I guess, to notice. I've seen it multiple times this year that due to the hiring process of having people in different locations, there are small spots. For example, we have 70 people at LeoCode, and we have people in different cities in Poland. And what we've noticed, which is quite interesting, they have their own small communities. So they gather together from time to time, even if we don't organize like one big family meeting because it's like a bit challenging to organize like a few times a year. They started doing those small communities. So we rent them the office or they have some, and this is quite nice. And I see it as an interesting movement that even if people are remote, you always find at least 2-3 people if you're big enough, so they can stick together in this specific city. And it also works like a glue because they work for this mother company, but somehow they're a small team in their own cities they like, they want to be. And it also creates a good sense of belonging. And I really like it. And I see that it works.
Okay, thank you guys for sharing this. So I wonder, you've said about when I asked the question at first, related to the relation within a company and filling of this support of the team. What do you all started to share how relation could be changed by some online relation or other forms of relation that are not like traditional when we had, for example, at work. So like coming in the Gather town somewhere online or in the pub near the office or Mallorca. So the question is whether the relation could be, when we were in the office, the thing that existed was the feedback loop that we constantly have from the peers. So we see we've been doing something, we've seen that someone was reacting to this constantly, and we've just been adapting. But how, what currently can compensate this feedback loop? Maybe we've shared the several other parts related to the factor that influence developer motivation. And many of you share the thing to be mastering something, feeling of improvement, of progress. What do you think maybe some other factor that could get a more impact in the times of COVID when we can't compensate it with the real relation that we have at the office? What things can, what other factors maybe of major influence for developer motivation that we can use?
More one-to-ones, and I call them healthcare checklists. I also hired additional person that helps me with that, not only with scheduling, talking to me, but there is one more guy who supports me in the team. However funny it sounds, just for talking, for listening to those guys, how they are and so on. Because if your team grows, at some point I also have some operational stuff to do, and I want to be able to be only coach and listen, making some career paths. So, but I know they need this, so I just want to make sure that there is like more supporting team from management side, and they can talk more often. Once per month we have a regular one-to-one, bigger one, and once per week, like a very short one, or at least we share something on Slack. So we try to make some like fun zone channel on Slack where everyone can contribute, and you see who feels good because the memes are coming and they comment, and you see that some people don't respond for a week. Or for example, we have this rule that we say good morning everyone who's starting the work on the main channel, something funny, just to make the day. And sometimes I see that someone didn't say, I don't know, hello or hi, which means that there's something wrong, and I need to ask him if everything is fine. So you spot it by lack of activities, and then you have to somehow react. So that's what I do, a little bit more Slack activities and more personal calls with them.
I mean, I think for once, I think the accepting that nothing can replace like human interaction. I feel that is true. Suddenly, like, you know, what happened, our world changed from this 3-dimensional world to like 2-dimensional world now, like, you know, where we are in this Zoom, and this happens so sudden that like a lot of the technology haven't catched up to even to like to fill that gap. Like we have some sort of technology to make like remote work effective, but it's not there yet. So one example is, you know, I mean, Meta being working on metaverse, or like, you know, we have started trying it recently, like using workrooms. Like, you know, it's a virtual environment where you come as a team. It feels weird to begin with, like, but once you get it, like just having these like body languages, like because it captures your body language, like, you know, how you're moving your hand, how you like, you know, you're moving your body, like, you know, how that gives you a sense of how people are feeling. So I feel like going forward, be a little bit understanding what's going on, like in terms of even platforms and technology, which is gonna help bridge that gap, and start being an early adopter of some of those technology, and see how that can help to bridge this as the relational gap. Is, I feel, we have started doing it, and I think doing it early is important. But what I have observed, at least within a team, not for the managers, like, you know, I mean, we have always done one-on-one, we have always, like, you know, talked to a different people, but for individual number of meeting has gone up, is because like now, like the conversation that you have to overhear, like, you know, you're working on something, you're like, oh shit, this is broken. Like you overhear it and you know how to, like, you know, fix it. Now you have to have one-on-one, like, you know, to explain to someone why this thing is broken. So that is being a little bit like extra work on ICs that I have seen started happening. And now we are being a little bit intentional about like capturing it and making sure that how to reduce those like extra burden. Because when you start the one-on-one, instead of having 1 minute conversation, now you're having 30-minute conversation. And those extra 20 minutes adds up like during the day, during the week, and you feel this like feeling of like, you know, I mean, the work-life balance is not there. Like, not the only reason, but like one of the reasons that I have started noticing like across the team as we started going remote.
The challenging part of being a manager is that you are this kind of mentor, psychologist, and everything goes through you. All kinds of situations, problems. I have 2 little kids, so I've learned how to be very empathic, and I mean my borders are very, very far away from me, so not much can touch me. But still, because we are talking about the motivation of our software engineers, the people we love, we like, we share teams, and sometimes I have this feeling, and that's what a friend of mine gave me a few weeks ago. But first of all, you should take care of yourself, because that's important. If you want to motivate other people, you have to be sure that you are well driven and well motivated, because you are taking on your boredom different people's stories, challenges, issues, sometimes problems, and it also can be overwhelming. And there's a very tiny line between you advising people, helping them, and you feeling, oh, it's a bit too much. And I guess that's my personal experience. But because, you know, I'm an extrovert, and I'm in the office, I'm the power guy. I'm the guy who goes in and shakes hands and makes show, and they like it. I also love it. But doing this behind the screen, it's also difficult to me personally. I cannot give them my whole emotions. It doesn't transfer like that through the screen. It feels the vibe, but it's completely different. And sometimes you take back all of their problems, you have them, and then you're like, what you mentioned, Yogesh, about weekends. Sometimes through the weekend, I think about some challenges of my developers, because on Monday I need to give them the answer I didn't have on Friday, and this is tricky.
By the way, on that point, I think I'm glad that you brought that point up, like, because sometimes managers feels like a therapist, and it's very important not to actually engage in that, because we are not trained to be a therapist. We are not like, psychologists. And if we try to even give advice on like psychological, we are going to just make things worse, like, not better. So relying on, first of all, like if you are in a company which provide you this like emotional help or like whatever, relying on that and making team or people aware of it and yourself aware of it, and like, using it is extremely important. But if it's not there, like if you're in a startup or like, you're starting your own company, I think in a remote environment, early investing on the emotional health, like whether it's like, the company that we used to use in LinkedIn or Lyra, like, but something like that, where, you have a professional psychologist helping people to go through like the things that they're going to extremely important. But as a manager, stay away, like as much as possible, stay away from giving like, advice related to like their personal life, because we are not trained for that and we shouldn't try it.
I totally agree to that. In fact, we should be as a guide rather than being an expert and then guide them to the right direction, right? Otherwise, it just bottles up on us, and they are looking for directions from us, and we end up guiding in a wrong way. So should never do that. So we should be always thoughtful about that. Also, one thing that our company is also using is like assessment tools like Pecan, which will have like a bunch of questions, randomize it, and then get the inputs from all the individuals, and then they try to, they have a automation tool behind it which will like give you a value like total whether this person is happy right now or how motivated this person is. So probably we can use such tools to minimize the impact of being remote, but again, it can't be totally removed, right?
Okay. Yeah, guys, that's actually that was a very fast conversation. We already come into an hour of our talk. We actually haven't gone through all of the question, but despite all these things, the thing that you brought in the end, it actually concluded very, very well the whole conversation about the role of engineer manager, and you still have to forget about yourself and that you need to be motivated and feel in the sense of purpose, autonomy, understanding why you're doing this, and finding the balance between becoming the therapist and the engineer manager who guides. Thank you for your time. That was really nice to meet you.